2019 Board of Education meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Abbott?
Present.
Mr. Bratton?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Millis?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Pledge of allegiance led by Mr. Johnson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. Do we see any questions or concerns?
Are there any changes we need to know about?
I don't think we do. I think we're good.
See, I checked about 2 o'clock and didn't see any addendum. I didn't check after that.
Yeah, no, I think we're okay with this. Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Millis.
Second.
Ms. Parker, second that. A roll call, please.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
And Mr. Abbott?
Yes. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the May 13th, 2019 meeting. So any questions or concerns?
Checked over my section, everything looked good, skimmed the rest of it. Unless you guys caught something,
I did.
I did not see anything. Is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Bratton. I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Abstain.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to public participation. Technology department
The
update.
clock is running.
There you go, you started.
I'm just
So
teasing.
you got 3 pieces of paper from me. The first one, if you remember last year, we partnered with ClassLink, which is a single sign-on opportunity. So that first piece of paper, it's only 8.5 by 11. This really is just information. The far right-hand corner, this kind of shows why this was so beneficial to us. Last year alone, we had over almost 500,000 different logins across this district. So those are from students, staff alike. So that's a very powerful program. We could drill into it further. We can look at analytics as far as top apps, top users, top buildings, a lot of different things like that. So this is really just for information for you guys to show the money that was allocated to this was well spent. Okay. The second 2, this talks about the work orders that we do. So you know we do a work order system in the IT department. So you've got 2 different pages. The first one, which has the blue pie chart that says 100% down the corner. You look up at the top left, my department worked 1,811 tickets this last school year. Now that is just tickets alone. That doesn't count the walk-ins that we take care of, doesn't count the phone calls that we take care of. That's just people who actually put in tickets. We have 13 that are pending, 42 that are overdue, but when we hit summertime, those are typically summer requests from teachers, and they lay in an overdue state until we go into the buildings and start putting stuff back together. We have a lot of them from the primary school where they want old furniture removed, that's the old computers set on, things like that. So I don't get too worked up over those. When I do get worked up is if I see overdue tickets during the school year. We work very, very hard to take care of those. So if you flip to the second page of that, look at the top right. Average response time is still pretty good. It's about 0.86 days, so it's less than a day for response time. Average resolution time is a little bit underneath that, it's a little gray area, 2.44 days. That's raised about a day from last year. Last year, this time, we were about 1.56. That's just due to the sheer volume. You know, we've increased number of devices, we've increased workload within the department. So, you know, that's still not horrible. We'd like to see it go down. But it is what it is. The only other thing that I have as far as moving into next year, we're beginning a transition away from laptops for student use and moving into Chromebooks. It was really a financial decision. To do a cart of laptops cost this department about $15,000. To do a cart of Chromebooks for the same number of devices is about $7,400. So it cuts that in half. It allows us with the money to do a lot more. So we are transitioning away from laptops for students. Now there are key areas, you know, graphic design, robotics, programming. You have to have a traditional desktop environment of those. So, but for normal everyday use, if you look back at Schoology, that's all web-based stuff. 95% of the stuff we do is web-based, so it makes good sense to kind of start moving to that Chrome arena. So, did I hit my mark? Did I hit 45 seconds?
I didn't look, I was confused.
That's all I've got. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
When we turned our slates into you and the changes were made, why were the changes made, just out of curiosity?
Okay, so 2 reasons. So Adobe changed their license model.
Okay.
Used to be, we paid for the Adobe suite. It's about $7,000 a year, but it got us about 15 different programs. There was never a sign-in to this. Adobe and Smart both changed their licensing model to now they require people to log in and authenticate into those programs. No real reason as to why, because we still pay for the license that we have. It's just, they like to say it's vendor accountability for us. It's really not. Because,
Yeah, I was gonna say, how is that?
we control who has that program on your device. So that's why we did this with Adobe. We are moving staff email from Microsoft to the Google platform effective July 1st. That was a conscious decision. We actually looked at this a couple years ago before Mr. Hahn came in as superintendent. And
You mean when things were running more smoothly? I'm joking.
Yeah.
You guys are supposed to laugh.
So
What to practice
we
this.
kind of revisited this back in the late winter. Because every classroom I go in, I see kids not really using Microsoft stuff. They're not using Word and Excel, they're using Google.
Yeah.
Well, when you have staff email that sits over on a Microsoft platform, you have students email that sits over on a Google platform, and they're working in a Google Doc, there isn't a seamless way to share that with their teacher. So it increased the amount of time that it took for that teacher to get that, which really lessens the amount of instructional time that they have. So, we looked at all the parameters, we asked the teachers their thoughts, and really it was overwhelming that, yeah, I'm glad we're doing it now, wish we'd done it 3 years ago. So it was really a conscious decision. So effective July 1st, everybody's email will go from Microsoft to Google. Now, we kind of looked at it, and everything that we do since I've come in is now based on a first name dot last name basis. Email will be the same. So instead of S-Hahn, it's just going to be Sean.Hahn. That takes care of duplicates, so you don't have to remember S-Hahn and S-A-Hahn, or K-Wins and K-E-Wins. It's now simply first name dot last name at bloomcarroll.org. Okay? Other questions?
Well, that includes ours too, correct?
That includes ours too.
That
I was gonna
includes
say.
ours. Yeah. So we'll do a letter probably next week to everybody across the district, all staff members, that just let you guys know what your email is, what your temporary password is. We'll work with you to get them set up and get everything migrated over. Okay. Questions?
Mark will be in the sea right after that.
Yeah, probably.
All right, thanks, sir.
Further questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, treasurer's recommendation and reports. Travis?
Okay, thank you. Item 7A is approve the May financial statements for a total expense of $10,831,377.94. Of that, a little over $8.5 million from the consortium. You have the financial statements in the packet, electronic page 17. Not a lot of activity here in May. Obviously, we're in the final month of our fiscal year, so once this month ends and we get to July, I'll have a fiscal 19 summary for you. That'll be a lot more detailed, and we'll really take a look at the total finances, actual as opposed to estimates for the fiscal year. So really, only thing to report on with the executive summary is, again, just an update to show that we're still really close, both revenues and expenditures, to where we had estimated based upon looking at it from a perspective of May 31st. Current carryover is close to $4.5 million. That'll drop again here in June, as it's a really low revenue month. But any questions on the May financial statements or the checks written during the month?
The question I have is about budget things, which I don't know that they're completely done yet. So as far as the state budget goes, our biennium budget, are they done yet?
They're not.
They're not. They usually aren't.
Not only are they not done, but we've gotten a lot of conflicting information. The latest information, unfortunately, is that a lot of the schools are going to be flatlined, which was news to us, kind of came out of left field because they had looked at some of all the revamping with the cut Patterson. Of course, you've got the cap, and you know the cap, even though it's been capped, at least it's grown a little bit
Right.
the last couple of years. And the last proposal from the governor would that the cap would not grow going into next year, which would have obviously an adverse effect on us. But try not to panic yet. They've got until June 30th. That's normally when.
And they can set the clock
And they
back
can
at
set the
State
clock
House.
back,
They
yeah.
actually do that.
So.
Yeah, because we were thinking we were gonna remove it.
Yeah, they've been literally have been all over the place with going through the various legislative process.
And
so.
at the OSBA thing, those two men, Cupp and Patterson, spoke while they spoke, and we asked questions, and they were very sincere, Republican and Democrat, very sincere about all of it, and you know they aren't getting what they want either. So
It started with the Senate version with Cup Patterson, and then the House basically eliminated that funding idea formula with Cup Patterson. And it's going back to the Senate now, which can continue to make some revisions to it. And they've heard testimony from both sides, districts like ours who are growing and need caps removed, and then they've heard from districts that are losing enrollment that don't want to lose too much funding at one time. So it'll be interesting to see what works out, but I'm hoping, I'll bring up my part, I'm hoping in the next 20 days, we'll have a better idea.
So should we think about talking to our state senator? Or not?
I've emailed them, I've talked to
Have
them.
you? Well, that's
both
good.
of them,
That should
yeah,
do it.
yeah.
I
know it got sent on to our representatives because I had somebody from their office contact me who lives locally, and they screened the emails for the representatives, and they said why not?
Well, good. Because when I would take teachers in on OEA lobby day, they would say, well, we never see anybody except on OEA lobby days. And I'm thinking, and they probably tell somebody else, we don't see anybody. And it's like, you're lying because your lips are moving.
Yeah.
The old joke at the State House is, how can you tell politicians lying, their lips aren't moving, either party? But it's like, yes, some people come in here and talk to you. I know superintendents do, so.
They've heard from many on both sides of the arguments.
Good.
Good. No further questions for Mr. Biggin? Is there a motion to approve May's financial statement?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Bratton,
Yes.
Mr. Millis,
Yes.
Ms. Parker, Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Item B is approve the following final appropriations for fiscal 2019 as listed. This is really the final step in the budgetary process that began last September. By law, you have to send in a final version of the appropriations to the auditor by June 30th, and no expenditures in any given fund can exceed this amount. So there's a little bit of cushion built in, but quite frankly, these are almost exactly the same as they were in September. So it's basically just a formality to finalize the appropriations for the fiscal year.
No, we're on B. No,
Yes, sorry.
Just want to make sure I'd gotten back to the right place.
Yep, 7B.
Are there any questions for Mr. Biggin? Seeing none, is there a motion? Motion made by Ms. Parker,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Millis. Roll call, please.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
And Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
And C is subsequently to approve the first temporary appropriations for fiscal 2020 as follows. Exactly how it reads in the motion. These are temporary. This is just to get us started on July 1. By law, we can't make expenditures, including payroll, without a set of appropriations in place. And that's all this does is it adheres to that legal requirement. We will have a permanent set to you in September, which will incorporate all the wish list items, all the positions that we've added, negotiated raises and whatnot. So this is just a starting point.
So is this pretty close to what 2019 was?
Yeah, it normally would just kind of carry it forward, but certainly we'll have exact numbers by September. This just allows us to operate during July and August.
Just out of curiosity, where did the extra 20,000 come in?
The construction fund, because we're going to start to get into some high dollar expenditures out of the 004 fund.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Biggin? Seeing none, is there a motion? Motion made by Mr. Bratton,
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Item D is approve the allocation of the June 2019 interest rebates from the qualified school construction bonds as follows. Again, this goes back to the middle school bond issue that we passed under the Federal Stimulus Act, where any school construction bonds were funded interest-free. So the way this works is we go ahead and make the interest payment, and then we're refunded by the IRS. But the way the initial resolution was written, it takes board authorization to code it into a fund. In this case, we just put it into the bond retirement. Helps the millage drop faster because it inflates the balance in the 002 fund. So it's definitely a break to the taxpayers.
Any questions, Mr. Bigham, regarding this? No, is there a motion? Ms. Parker, I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
E, happy to approve accepting a grant in the amount of $13,817.09 from Bureau of Workers' Compensation for the purchase of 2 floor scrubbers, and installation of a secure keyed card access system. If you recall, we had a 1 floor scrubber and the key card access system, which will be down here at the edge of the middle school building, at the end of the middle school building closest to the primary on the wish list. So this grant will fund 3/4 of those expenditures, thus decreasing a little bit that we have to take out of our general fund. So thanks to Mr. Pugh and Mr. Thomas for assisting me in this application as well.
I didn't realize that Bureau of Workmen's Compensation would actually let you buy floor scrubbers and things.
Yeah, it's a safety. If you can
yeah.
prove that it's safety and it
Safety,
will decrease injuries and slippages, then
Right.
that was the basis for that.
Very good. Is there a motion?
So,
Motion made by Mr. Johnson. I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
And Ms. Parker? And finally, we're thankful to be able to recognize the following donations from the Ohio Electric Cooperative, approximately $2,000 worth of science equipment, curriculum, and supplies for Bloom Carroll Middle School, specifically Pam Ingbert.
Any questions regarding this? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mellis, second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
And Mr. Abbott?
Yes. Moving on to 8, old business. A, approve the following policies as submitted 1 through 6. Questions regarding this?
This is your final.
Anything different with reporting child abuse? Just out of curiosity.
No, it was actually, the actual requirement was with, not with reporting, it was with the training and who has to be trained and how often, if I recall.
No further questions, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, I will second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to 9, superintendent's recommendations and reports.
Okay, let me start off with, as you know, we just wrapped up the spring testing season, and the state is getting better because of online testing. I guess that's one of the few benefits I feel of the state online testing, is that you get the results much faster than you used to. And we just got our preliminary results for grades 3 through 12 with all the state tests. There are 21 state tests at the high school level. You know, they're called end of course exams. There are 7 of them. But then you have ELA and math and some science as well throughout grades 3 through 8. So if you take a look, I gave you 2 handouts. The first one are preliminary results. I guess what I'm pleased to tell you is that we showed improvement from last year in 13 out of 21 tested areas. At this point, we believe we have met 10 indicators. You have to achieve an 80% proficiency for each cohort at each grade level on each test in order to meet the indicator, and that is up to 80% now. You can see the column for Bloom Carroll as it compares to other Fairfield County school districts. You can also see the state average on the far right-hand side, and we're still waiting to get some numbers on a few tests and from a few other districts. But as of right now, what I can tell you, it looks like we've met 10, which is the same number as last year, and we've seen an increase in 13 of 21 tested areas. We're showing steady progress as we continue to get used to this testing, and as our students continue to get used to testing in an online format. I think that, looking at this, you can see that the next highest, we believe, is a school district to the south that had 6 out of 21 indicators. So we're sitting there at 10. I expect that to be competitive with a few districts from Franklin County and possibly from Licking County. But I think we'll be in probably the top 7 or 8 again in Central Ohio, 7 different counties. So I feel very good that we didn't drop. Some districts saw a drop in scores. They saw a drop in the number of indicators met, and I'm not going to say on the record here in a meeting which districts did not meet any, but you can see several districts did not meet any. Some met only 1 indicator, maybe 3, 4. So I feel very good about what our teachers and students and families are doing. I feel very good about what our administration is doing, and I think that, obviously our staff and our students should be commended, obviously, for their efforts in taking this serious and doing a good job. The next page that I provided, or I'm sorry, on the back of that for you, you can kind of see a breakdown of ELA, math, science, and social studies. You can see the number of students tested, the percent proficient this year in the spring of 2019, and you can see if it's an increase, if we didn't meet the 80% threshold, where we saw an increase. And then also you can kind of compare it to the spring of 2018, 17, and 16, and the trends. Now keep in mind that when you compare grade level year after year, you are not comparing the same cohort of students. You're comparing, this year's 3rd graders with last year's 3rd graders and the 3rd graders the year before that. But overall, are we doing better at each grade level in each tested area, increasing the achievement score? So we are making progress. In that spring of 2017, kind of an anomaly of a year in terms of some very high scores that, I don't know if you throw one out or why that happened that year, but that was a very good year. But you can go back to 2016, compare it to 2018, look at 2019. That's just for you to know. These results will become more final later in August and early September when the state report card comes out. We're not close enough in any area. If we have to remove a student or we're missing a student in the calculation from the state, that would change whether we make the 80% threshold or not. So I think this is going to stay pretty solid for us. But I guess what I wanted to show you is academically our students are doing well compared to others around the area, and I believe it'll show across the state. So really pleased with these preliminary results.
Great news.
Yeah.
Is there
Any
anything?
questions about?
Yeah, I do. Is there anything that can be done to improve the grade 8 and the geometry test scores?
Yeah, let me explain that a little bit. If you look at 8th grade at Bloom Carroll for math, what we have done, if you look at algebra, that algebra score isn't just high school anymore. That includes 59 students in 8th grade algebra, students that were pushed or that are gifted being serviced for enrichment by taking algebra in 8th grade. Mm-hmm. But we also identified about 25 other students or 30 students that we felt had an academic history, teacher recommendations, standardized test scores, that we felt they were performing at a very high level and could be challenged and pushed to achieve more. So we worked with their families and they agreed to go into Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So obviously you're taking your enrichment students in 8th grade math plus the other high performers and putting them into algebra, which means your 8th grade math score is more of an average student or somebody that might be at risk a little bit more. So you're taking the best testers out of there, so to speak.
True.
So I don't want to dwell too much on that, but what I do want to point out is, with all that said, with challenging those kids, 58 out of 59 of them scored a 3 or higher, meaning they scored proficient or higher in Algebra 1 in 8th grade on these tests. So I feel good that we challenge those students, and that means that they're going to be able to take higher level math courses later on in high school. And, you know, they also already earned graduation points. If they scored a 3, meaning proficient or accelerated or advanced, they scored a 3, 4, or 5 in terms of math points on the end of course exams for Algebra 1. So those kids are already getting points towards graduation, which is a good thing. But yeah, geometry has been consistently, even though that number is low, 56%, compare it across the rest of the county, 48%, 33, 41, 54, 40, 44. As of right now, it's still the highest, so it's a tough test, and we gotta continue to make progress and help our students do a little bit better there.
Since you mentioned graduation, I don't see any place else here on this really dealing with it. So what are we going to be doing with, and I perhaps should know this, but what are we going to do with the AP classes, et cetera? I know that at least before you could go more than a 4.0 grade point average. So what are we going to be doing with that come next year?
We've been using an add-on starting this year, and
Right.
basically for every AP or CCP course in which you earn a C or higher, you will earn a 0.025 add-on to your GPA.
Okay.
So, you know, if you get an A and you know you get an A and you take AP Calc, you'd have a 4.025.
Okay.
Okay, and that keeps adding up for each AP course as long as you get a C or higher. So it again pushes kids to
To do it. Yeah.
to try to be challenged a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Real quick, back to grade 8, when did we start pushing some of those kids?
This was the
into
first
algebra?
year we had 2
Okay.
sections of algebra. This past school year was the first year. We've looked at it, and here, the other thing that happens is in the middle school, the teachers are teaching 6 periods of their subject area, and then the 7th period is an intervention period during the day. Then they have a lunch and prep on a 9-period day. So if they're teaching 6 sections and you have to teach algebra to enrichment students as an accelerated course, if you only have 19 kids that are identified by law as gifted, and you have a class of 160 or 70 kids, well, now all your other 5 sections of 8th grade math have very high numbers in them. So I worked with the middle school principal and said, look, I think we can identify some students through performance in the classroom, standardized test scores over a series of years, teacher recommendations, and parent permission that we feel we can push and challenge, and let's see how they do. Well, the result was 58 out of 59 scored proficient or higher this year, and many of them actually outperformed.
They got a 3, so do they get 3 points towards graduation?
Yeah, if they scored proficient, that would be the equivalent of 3 points. Accelerated would be 4, advanced would be 5. Yeah. So if they scored basic, they got 2 points towards graduation. So that's how that works. Any questions about the testing data so far?
That's good news.
Okay. The other thing I want to point out, if you get a chance on your way out of here, and I apologize I don't have pictures, I didn't have my phone when I found out about it, but drive by around the back of the high school and go past the high school courtyard. We had some trees removed from there last year, and it was just looking kind of rough. We didn't have grass growing. We had an Eagle Scout. You never know how these projects are going to end up. So we had an Eagle Scout come in and did a phenomenal job over a 3-day weekend. What was it, Travis? A couple weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, over
Memorial Day.
Yeah, I mean, the student came in here, and you ought to just see how nice the courtyard looks right now. Put pavers down, put grass seed and topsoil down, put some benches in, put down some mesh fabric to keep the seating down. I mean, he did a quality job. His name is Sam Graham, and he just graduated this past year. But if you get a chance if you need contact information and you want to reach out to Sam Graham, just let me know. I did call him and thank him for it. Mr. Conrad obviously worked with him on the project, but the courtyard in the high school looks so much better.
Good.
So, I want to give you an update on kindergarten enrollment. Right now, we're sitting at 160 students in kindergarten. We're getting close to that threshold where we might have to consider another kindergarten position. I'm continuing to monitor that very closely. I really want to see what happens, not only with the numbers over the next month, but also with the state funding formula in the next 20 days to see what happens there. I feel a little bit better adding a position if there was some increase or if the caps mysteriously are removed in the next month. We would be in good shape. However, we had 5 retentions. So those 5 retentions put us at 160. So we would have about 155, but 5 retentions put us at 160. And 3 of the 5 are foster placements. So they may be here for a short period of time.
True.
But they may be here for a few years.
Could be transient, you don't know.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna have to really watch and kind of judge that, and I'll keep you informed, but right now, I feel okay. We added the first grade teacher. They were at 167, went down to 162, but we had 2 retentions in first grade, and then we had a new move-in, so we're at, what did I say, we're at like 165 right now, I think, in first grade, so that's still our largest class in the primary school where we have a new teacher. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. And then if you look up here, at the Clever Touch, Mark, start there.
How clever is it?
There we go. There we go. I want to show you some work was done on the track last week, and as you know, the board approved a project to replace the track. They had milled it off, put new asphalt down. This company came in here, did a real good job, clean job. They also replaced all this area of this gravel bed in front of the concession stand that used to just be dirt and grass. Put a drainage ditch in there, covered it with gravel only to get that water out of there so it won't run across the track. Also tied in a line to drain that into one of the storm sewers here underneath the track. So I think that'll really help. And you can see they went all the way around near the visitor side there, but it looks really good. And then, on the blacktop area, we also put in a drain right there, and we'll be able to get that water out of there as well. So Travis could probably tell you better than I can when when Archie Golis, when his company will be coming in, but they will be putting down the polyurethane finish. We have to stay off of that for a couple of weeks. They should be done by the middle of July with this project. But
have to stay off of it for 14 days.
Yeah.
And they are
For
pretty.
the cement you're talking.
Yeah, to install the track. Yeah.
But again, really happy with the paving company. They came in here and did a great job in a short amount of time. So looks good. Yeah. All right, I think that's good. So if there's not any questions, I'll move on to 9B, students in programs. Number 1, approve May 2nd, 2020 as the date for the junior senior prom to be held at Little Brook Meadow in Lancaster, Ohio from 7 to 10 p.m. Number 2, approve the following 2019-2020 high school and middle school athletic handbooks. Number 3, approve the following summer camps for 2019. It's a speed camp done by our cross-country and track coach, Luke Sanderell, June 18th, 20th, 25th, 27th, and July 9th, 11th, 16th, 18th, 23rd, and 25th. This will be free to all students that want to participate, just not athletes. If there are any students that haven't played sports that want to play sports, it's really a speed and agility training, and he has been trained in this type of conditioning. But it's really, any athlete. It's just not a football player or baseball player, softball player. All the sports are working out together and just working on speed, fitness, and agility. Okay. Number 4, approve the kindergarten school bus safety program for registered BC kindergarten students to be held August 6, 2019 from 9:15 to 11:30 at the primary school.
Any questions for Mr. Hahn? Is there a motion? Motion made by Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Bratton. Roll call, please.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Okay, 9C, personnel and employment. Number 1, approve the employment of Jenna Hanna as a kindergarten teacher on an initial sequence 1-year limited contract at step 10 with a master's degree for the 1920 school year, pending timely receipt of verifications and background checks, effective August 19th to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Lisa Hubendick. Number 2, approve the employment of Jessica Roberts as an intervention teacher at the intermediate school on an initial sequence 1-year limited contract at step 10 with a master's degree for the 1920 school year, pending timely receipt of verifications and background checks effective August 19th, 2019. And that is to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Kayla Fowler. Number 3, approve the employment of Kristen Riggs as a first grade teacher for the new position on an initial sequence 1-year limited contract at step 0 with a bachelor's degree for the 1920 school year, pending timely receipt of verifications and background checks effective August 19th, 2019. Number 4, amend the initial sequence 1-year limited contract of Corey Heater, middle school math teacher, from a bachelor's degree at step 0 to a bachelor's degree with 150 semester hours at step 0 for the 1920 school year, pursuant to receipt of official transcripts. Number 5, approve the request of Catherine Graham for a salary column change from a bachelor's degree with 150 semester hours to a master's degree, effective June 11th, 2019, pursuant to receipt of official transcripts. C6, approve Jeff Luke as a substitute bus driver for the 1920 school year, pending acceptance of agenda item 9F1. Number 7, approve Sarah Wooding as a substitute teacher for 2019, the 2nd and 3rd grade summer reading program. Number 8, approve Charles Woods as a 2019 summer custodial worker effective May 30th, 2019. Number 9, approve a request for 1 unpaid leave or dock day for Billy Sutton on May 22nd, 2019. Number 10, approve the following FMLA leave request of Jenny Lee McKinney, high school teacher, effective August 19th and not to exceed 60 days. Number 11, approve Bobby Smith as a home instructor for a homebound student for the summer of 2019 for up to 25 hours at $30 per hour. Number 12, approve the following student teacher internship placements for the 2019-20 school year, pending receipt of background checks. That would be Kelly Pence from UD with Amy Moore in the high school guidance department from August of 2019 through May of 2020. Letter B, Megan Clardy from OSU with Susan Young in kindergarten, December of 2019 through April 24th, 2020. Angela DiCoso from OSU with Taylor Mavis in first grade, December of 2019 through April 24th, 2020. D. Amber Maynard from OSU with Janine Walker in third grade from December of 2019 through April 24th, 2020. Number 13, approve the following OU students to participate or to provide speech services at kindergarten screening May 29th through the 31st, 2019, as presented A through I. Number 14, approve Abby Dybel as a Wednesday, Saturday school and detention monitor for the 1920 school year on an as-needed basis. Number 15, approve the following athletic supplemental contracts for the 1920 school year, pending receipt of verifications and background checks. That would be Anthony Ireland, varsity girls basketball, Group A, 2 years of experience, and Greg Booth, varsity assistant girls basketball, Group C, 10 years of experience. Number 16, approve the employment of Linda Millis as a long-term substitute teacher for Jenna Lee McKinney at the high school effective August 22nd, 2019 through approximately September 6th, 2019.
Is the, just out of curiosity, is the Riggs hiring, is that any relation to Kent Riggs?
It is.
I just wondered, 'cause I saw a Canal Winchester address and I thought.
Yeah,
okay.
she graduated from Ohio University. We had about 140 applicants. They interviewed 6 people for the kindergarten job and the first grade job. And there was another we'd probably like to hire as well. We just had some really good candidates, but what's tough is they all come out of these colleges with pre-K to 3 license, and their resumes all really look the same, and you know, they've all had their student teaching experience, but everybody needs an opportunity to get started, I think, and I think we were all given one.
So what about, out of curiosity, not with the candidates, but with what is OSU offering as far as I guess you'd say payment in a way to school districts for taking student teachers?
Normally,
do they still doing script or not?
No, they've really cracked down on a lot of that. They can't give payments directly to teachers, and they cannot give them fee waivers, like for tuition waivers.
Yeah,
They have to give the money straight to the district, and then we just put it into their own fund. They can buy.
Well, it went to the districts when I was teaching at Procore, but then, you know, you applied for fee waivers, and that was almost all my plus 30 hours were free.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions or concerns?
Probably should add a voting line, I would say, after.
Yeah, I forgot, didn't see
I
that.
know, probably have number 1 after Miss Hannah.
That, or if you just want to abstain.
I'm just gonna abstain on the whole thing, so. We still have, as long as we still have 3 votes, that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
No questions then?
any further questions, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson. Second by Ms. Parker. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Bratton,
Yes.
Mr. Mellis,
Abstain.
and Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Okay. D, contracts and agreements. Approve entering into a 5-year athletic training services agreement with Ohio Health beginning July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2024 at a rate of $18,000 per year to be paid biannually in October and April of each year throughout the term of the agreement. Pretty good deal for us that rate stays at that, which is what we're currently paying for another 5 years, and we have an option to keep that rate and agree to 5 more beyond that if we're happy. So,
It seems like a great.
yeah, I mean, to not see an increase. Number 2, approve a contract for security services with the Fairfield County Sheriff's Department for a school resource officer for the 1920 school year. Again, this is a position that we put in place last year.
What's the cost going to be, or do you know?
Yeah, it's in the packet. It's 66,000.
Oh, it's in the packet.
66,000.
I did scroll through, but I didn't.
And that's because we're responsible for the salary, the benefits,
Right.
insurance of that resource officer during those 9 months that they're employed
Oh, I
with
don't have a
us.
problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
In case somebody asks me on the street,
Yeah.
occasionally I do get questions.
I always remind people of, we love the Carroll Police Department, but they're not always on duty.
Right.
And if there was an emergency here, it would take 10 minutes at least before a deputy could respond. And by that time, the school emergency is typically over. Having somebody on this campus and also working in Lithopolis and visiting that school during the day, just gives us another set of eyes from a different perspective to help protect our students and staff. And I think it's a good investment for the district.
Oh, I think so. A lot of people feel that way, that I've seen.
Yeah.
Comment.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mellis. I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Nothing under E for other, and on page 6, under F, the personnel resignations and retirements. Accept the resignation of Jeff Luke, bus driver, effective immediately. Jeff has been with us, I think, for about 3 years, and he's done a good job, but he's moving on to some other opportunities.
But he wants to be a substitute.
Yeah, he wants to continue to substitute.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
No questions, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson. Second by Ms. Parker. Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes. Okay, moving on to new business. Approve the following policies for a first reading. 1, BJA liaisons with school board associations. 2, JEFB, release time for religious instruction. Number 3, GDBB-R, support staff leaves and absences. B, approve a resolution naming Nathan Conrad as acting superintendent in an event of extended absences or leaves by Sean Hahn effective immediately. C, approve naming the new K-5 elementary school, Bloom Carroll Elementary School. Are there any questions?
I'm not planning on going out of town this summer, so.
Is there something you?
No.
But if you got hit the golf ball playing with
Yeah,
Landis, though,
I
he
mean,
didn't charge.
usually if I go out of town for a week or something, and requisitions need signed, we typically do that, or if there's an emergency here, but not much going on this.
Okay. No questions, is there a motion?
So. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bratton. Motion made by Mr. Bratton, second by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mellis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
And Mr. Abbott?
Yes. Moving on to board reports and information. A, Board of Education liaison updates, facility management. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, the only thing we had was last week, Joe and I met with Sean and Travis in regards to the budget, looking at the design development. We'll have a more definitive budget number probably come June 19th, I think we said.
Yeah,
They're coming here to meet with us.
Some is working on the DD reconciliation with Shore, and they need clarification on technology and
Early site.
early site work. They needed to get a better understanding before they can reconcile that estimate for the DD phase. So we'll get together, I think on the 27th, for a meeting, and we should have a good idea then.
Moving on, number 2, personnel and labor management. Mr. Millis or Mr. Brown?
I do have a question anyway. So when are we gonna be working on the superintendent's contract there, superintendent? You said after school's out.
I would like to try to get one in place before the start of next school year,
Well, I thought
going into my last year, so
Okay.
hopefully next month.
Okay.
You guys are okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, moving on to OSBA representative. Mr. Millis, Ms. Park?
The only thing I got was I got an email about wondering if I wanted to be on the legislative commission after December 31st. That's the only thing I've got about OSBA.
Okay, moving on to policy. Nothing further to report. Mr. Johnson?
First reading last week. Pretty short.
These policies, that was it, that was all that was in the packet, so.
Moving on to safety, health, and wellness. I have nothing. Moving on to finance. Mr. Brown? Mr. Johnson?
Nope.
Moving on to B, upcoming PTO booster Board of Education meetings, 6/19 of 19, Board of Education planning meeting at 6 p.m. at the middle school library. Then on July the 15th, Board of Education regularly scheduled meeting at 6 p.m. at the middle school library. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Millis. I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Millis.
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Mr. Bratton.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
And Ms. Parker.
Hey, hey, hey.
Time out, 6:46.
Yeah, buddy.